please.
Just give me
A very
one
good
minute.
afternoon to everyone, and a very warm welcome to the distinguished speakers and the delegates at this session on emerging opportunities for Indian enterprise in the new world order. This is the third edition of the CIS Digital Transformation Summit that we're organizing. Canada is the partner country. We have more than 60 plus speakers who are addressing almost 13 plus sessions in the 3 days. Today is dedicated on the healthcare, tomorrow being on the infrastructure, and then day after completely focusing on the automotive. I'll just I'd like to introduce the speakers. We have with us Mr. Chris Gopalakrishnan, Chairman, CI Digital Council, past President CII, and also the co-founder of Infosys Limited. We also have with us Mr. Dilip Soni, who is the Chairman of the CI Smart Manufacturing Council and MD Rockwell Automation India Limited. We also have with us Mr. Dharmendra Kapoor, Chief Executive Officer, Birla Soft Limited, and Mr. Vinod Sood, Managing Director, Hughes Cystic Limited. Without taking much of the time, I now hand the floor to Mr. Chris Gopalakrishnan to take the session forward. Over to you, Mr. Gopalakrishnan, please.
Thank you, Ankur, and let me welcome all the participants to this session. It's an honor and privilege for me to chair and moderate this session, and we have very eminent panelists joining us. To set the context for this session, let me briefly talk about the new world order as I see it, and then the emerging opportunities for Indian enterprises. Um, of course, in any discussion of the new world order, we have to talk about the COVID crisis, which has impacted all of us in the last 2 years. Um, Significant transition to digital, or digital has indeed accelerated in the last 2 years. In some sense, our survival was because of faster adoption to digital. Adoption of digital has happened faster. What could have taken probably 5 years happened in 5 months during this period. Every service that you can think of, healthcare, financial services, education, entertainment, everything, e-commerce, everything has taken on more of digital than ever before. Second, we have seen the need for higher bandwidth because as adoption of digital increased, we have seen a significant uptake in the adoption of telecom bandwidth and related products and services. So clearly, again, we have seen an uptick of that. Third, when you look at entertainment itself, more and more consumption of online digital content, a acceleration of over the air platforms, and gaming, entertainment apps, all of those things really took off. And in some sense, I see this as new opportunities when we think about the future. An example of how healthcare has changed is when we look at vaccination itself. The entire country's vaccination was run on top of the COVID platform that the government created. Almost 1.5 billion vaccinations were given, and in almost real time, we can actually get the status of the vaccination program. Each one of us could print out our certificates from the application itself. The second, so one is the digitization. The second, much slower moving crisis that's facing the world is the entire crisis on sustainability, climate change, etc. all the countries, including India, have made commitments to transition to a zero carbon, net zero economy. And India has said that we will move to a net zero economy by 2070. And so we have taken commitments, and the repercussions of this are, of course, in the automotive sector, in the entire, uh, you know, um, entire energy sector, oil and energy sector. The um, focus on how we transition to um, a, a sustainable economy in the future. Again, digitization will play an important role, and there are now opportunities for new fuel technologies and things like, including the hydrogen economy. So again, the new order will significantly um, focus on creating a sustainable economy going forward. And the third element of the new world order, in some sense, is the shift to Asia and the focus on Asia. 50% of the world's population and more than 50% of the GDP growth in the world comes from Asia today. And India will play an important role. India already has become, uh, you know, the uh, third or fourth or fifth largest economy based on size of the GDP, or based on uh, the purchasing power of the economy. But we are really in the top 5 in the world in terms of GDP, and we are in the top 3 when it comes to entrepreneurship, startups, innovation, etc. We have attracted a significant amount of investment in the last 1 year, more than $30 billion. Now, in this context, India has set its goal to become a $5 trillion economy. Of the $5 trillion, $1 trillion will come from digital, digitization of the economy. And we can get into more details of this. For example, out of the 1 trillion, about 300 billion will come from IT services itself. About 50 billion will come from IT products, SaaS products, and things like that. Then there are various services like engineering services, data center services, new services that will emerge out of that. So we have clearly set ourselves a goal for the digital contributing to at least 1 trillion of the $5 trillion. We have also set ourselves the goal to manufacture electronic components, chips, products in the electronic space in India. And Government of India has announced a massive program for manufacturing of, incentive program for manufacturing of electronic chips and products in the country. So with this, so opportunities are huge, and it's left to us in the industry to take advantage of this, and all of the trends that I talked about will drive and create opportunities for growth, and it's left to us in the industry to take advantage of these opportunities. So with this, I'm going to request each one of the panelists to make their opening remarks for about 5-6 minutes, and then I will make the session interactive by asking questions, and we will also take questions from the audience. As you listen, if you put on the Q&A box or the chat box your questions, then Ankur will relay them to me, or I will also take questions from the chat box. So with that, let me now ask Mr. Dilip Sani, Chairman CI Smart Manufacturing Council and Managing Director, Rockwell Automation India Private Limited, to make his opening remarks. Over to you, Dilip.
Sure. Thank you so much, Chris. Thanks for first of all, giving me the opportunity to be a part of this panel. And I think the topic that we've chosen today, couldn't be more appropriately timed. We are undoubtedly living through some exceptional times, exceptional from a challenge perspective, but exceptional also in the form of the opportunity that we are presented with, right? So, in terms of my opening comments, as I think about it, there are a few different things that are going through my mind. I think, and I'm going to be focusing, more sort of prominently on manufacturing as an opportunity, and also the role that smart manufacturing and Industry 4.0 and digitization, will play in helping shape the future of manufacturing. You already alluded to, the incentives that are being placed. You spoke in the context of electronics component and electronic product manufacturing, but clearly there's a lot of intent that the government is demonstrating in terms of scaling up manufacturing overall. We've been talking about it for a number of years now, right? Let me begin by the context, and I, by the way, agree with many of the comments that you made, right up front. I think the not only are the times very unique that we are living through, but the challenges, particularly about manufacturing, are quite non-trivial. Just to scope out the landscape, you manufacturing, it's been a traditional industry in many different ways, right? Uh, all of the traditional challenges, be it driving productivity year on year, driving efficiencies, they stay. They're going nowhere, right? And then having to contend with this significant disruption that we are having to live with right now, around, not only the COVID-related impact that we've had, but also the supply chain vagaries, right, which have been very significant for manufacturing, right? So they're adding on to this the set of challenges and the headwinds that manufacturing business leaders have to contend with. The regulatory compliances are getting tougher, right? Undoubtedly, you spoke also about sustainability related challenges, and I think that has to be a core and central concern for everyone. A lot of sustainability related challenges are sometimes pointed towards manufacturing, in terms of the carbon footprint that manufacturing causes, or the greenhouse gas emissions, and the conventional coal based power, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things have to be factored in when you begin to look at manufacturing. Now that's on how you go about manufacturing stuff. But if you really look at who is manufacturing serving, eventually it comes down to consumers like us. And the consumer demands have been rising. They've been rising steadily across decades, but particularly over the last a decade or a couple of decades, it's become intense. And then during these COVID related times, because of the emergence of these new models, e-commerce you spoke about, increasingly we talk about q-commerce, that is quick commerce. You want to be served in 15 minutes, right? All of these upcoming trends are completely, I would say, disrupting the way we were originally, looking at serving demands and having conventional supply lines, right, through a conventional distribution of product, right. All of that is undergoing, a sea change right now, right. So, we spoke a little bit about how you manufacture. We spoke about, the fact that considerations like sustainability are creating disruption, and then of course the business models, the way they are changing, consumer preferences. Take a look at automotive. I think it's the easiest industry and one that most of us are familiar with, right? The automotive life cycles used to run into double-digit number of years, some years back, has been consistently shrinking. It's come down to something like 3 to 4 years now, right? So all of those things are, and it's reflective of the emerging consumer preference, right? And the younger demographic that is coming in, with different demands. And now people talk about, do I need to even own an automotive? Can I have an automotive as a service, which is where all of these new models are coming in, new business models, that is. Now, if I put the spotlight on workforce related aspects, because manufacturing is a huge job creator and a lot of people are employed by manufacturing, the workforce related aspects are also undergoing significant change. You need newer skills. And I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about why do you need those skills and where would those skills be utilized? Because digital is getting infused as we speak into manufacturing at an ever increasing pace, right? But also because of the change in demographics, younger workforce coming in, they have different aspirations and expectations, right? So, I'm just trying to paint a little bit of the lay of the land, for all of us. And it points towards an, increasing, but an ever so more rapidly increasing complexity, that manufacturing is faced with, right? Now, if you bring it to the Indian context, it becomes an even more interesting calculus to solve, simply because, as we all know, a very high percentage of manufacturing in India resides in MSME segment, right? And you don't have, if you're an MSME, you don't have the luxury that the larger enterprises have, which is, having corporate teams that are focusing on technology or that are focusing on driving innovation, or supporting large scale, organizational transformation efforts and so forth. You don't, right? So that presents an interesting dynamic again, right? And in general, if you're an MSME, I would say you're disinclined to sink in crores into infrastructure when you worry about the obsolescence rate when it comes to technology, right? So in short, yeah, there are significant challenges, as is the opportunity as well, that manufacturing overall is faced with. And one thing is for sure, you cannot solve this problem. You cannot overcome this complexity and tap into the big opportunity that's out there by using the approach that we've historically followed, the legacy approaches, right? Which is why the need for innovation cannot be overemphasized, right? And Chris, you spoke about the 5 trillion economy. I would also point out over here that in that 5 trillion, you said digital is 1 trillion. Well, we aspire for manufacturing to become 1 trillion by 2025 again, and not only contribute $1 trillion to the GDP, but also create millions of new jobs, right? So that's kind of like lay of the land, right? And the need and the dependence that we have on manufacturing, but also at the same time, what are the challenges that we are faced with, right? Now, I would say that
Dilip,
while there is, yeah,
Dilip, you know, I will come back to you now. Let me go to Dharmender next and get his opening remarks. I will come back
sure,
to some of the points you made around the MSME segment and the challenges they face. The need for innovation, skilling. I'll come back and the transition to a circular economy, etc. A lot of questions are there in my mind, which I'll come back to you. But
very
in
good.
the
Look
meanwhile,
forward to. Sure.
yeah, let me
Thank you.
ask Dharmender to make his opening remarks. Over to you, Dharmender.
Thank you very much, Chris. I think this is absolutely a remarkable opening by both of you and setting the tone for the discussion, because it is absolutely good to see that the IT industry has crossed $200 billion, okay, with more than 5 million direct employees. But at the same time, the ambition is that how do we become $500 billion and then $1 trillion? So this is absolutely the right ambition to keep all of us engaged in the industry. I believe that, while all the disruption was caused by pandemic, I think the IT industry has been very resilient in its performance throughout. If we look at even the study by NASSCOM in the 2022, it is saying that the IT industry will be $227 billion by end of this financial year. So the progress is really very, very sharp. And now the union budget coming in, the government has already set the tone for the entire decade that it is all going to be about the technology, be it in the sectors such as healthcare or fintech or education or infrastructure, R&D, or any other sector that we talk about. I think technology is going to play a very, very significant role. So if I look at that, if our goal is from $200 billion to $500 billion, I would say that, which I always tell it to my colleagues also, that what brought you here will not really take you there. So I think there are many things that will be required to be done very, very differently. And I believe that if I had to put the whole order into the ecosystem, then there are four key entities that will have to work together in order to make that happen. The first is the government, which is what I talked about, because it will be very crucial role for the government now to take it from 200 to $500 billion, because it is a different type of attitude, aggression, the work order that is required to reach where we are. But going forward, it will be an ecosystem that will have to work. So the policy changes and many other things that will have to come, it will have to come by collaborating with the government. So government will have to play a significant role in that. The second would be the regulators. And it is because the data, artificial intelligence, machine learning is becoming center stage. And if that is the case, the regulation of the technology and the information is going to be very crucial, so that the sector is growing in a very effective manner. And it is not that we stop and start and stop, okay, and in order to really get the knee-jerk reactions. So it will be very crucial, and I generally put that in parallel to the brakes in the car. Why we are able to drive very, very fast today is because there are brakes in the cars. What if there were no brakes? Okay, we would not be able to even drive faster. So I think regulators have to play the roles of the brakes that are there in the car in order to really ensure that when we are catching the speed, we catch the speed very, very responsibly. We use the technology very, very responsibly. So I think that is the second crucial entity into the play that will be there. The third is the technology industry itself, because we have been seen as the service providers. And I think from there, we will have to look at what is the innovation that we'll bring on the table. I think we will need to do three things under the technology very, very critically. One is that how do we innovate in the products, in the solutions, and the service offerings that we bring in? We can't be just seen as order takers. We should be order makers. That would require us to really think business, think industry, and align our service offerings to the business and the industries very, very quickly. The second would be that how do we innovate on the skills and capability? Because we cannot grow unless until we are building enough capability, we are upskilling our resources, we are cross-skilling our people, and we are producing enough engineers who can fulfill the demand that is coming into the play. So from that, the educational institutes and the industry will have to work together in order to fulfill the demand that is there. I think that will be the second innovation that will be required. We cannot continue to train our people in the same manner that we have been doing it for last 30, 40 years. I think that has to change. And they also need to adopt to the digital in order to produce the capability, produce the skills that are required today. And third would be the automation and productivity improvement, because it cannot be looking at the number of hours the employees are putting, but how much we really produce per hour needs to improve. And for that, we will require significant amount of automation. The digital adoption within the IT industry is going to be a critical topic of interest, in my opinion, and we will have to take that significantly. So that's the third piece that I talked about, or third entity that I talked about that is required. And fourth is the technology consumers, which is that all the other industries who are going to be consuming technology and the end consumers who are going to consume the technology. Dilip talked about the quick commerce or e-commerce, and the end consumers today want the things to be available on their door in 15 minutes. So we require those platforms, and these platforms need to be adopted by various industries. So the IT industry is going to work on developing those platforms, but at the same time, the consumer of the platforms, that means the other industries, will have to rethink the business model, be it on the customer experience side, where e-commerce or quick commerce could be there, or it could be a digital supply chain. Dilip did talk about that also, that the whole supply chain needs to transform, and we need to really look at how do we cut the time to market significantly if we have to become better. So that is going to be the supply chain side of it. At the back of it, it will be that how do we ensure that the backend is also fully digitalized so that we are able to enable the businesses and the industries in a very, very effective manner. So I think these are the a few things that would be very, very important in order for us to look at, and these four entities will have to work together and collaborate together in order to make that happen. But last but not the least would be that today, if you look at for every other company, the significant revenue comes from the US market. We will also have to look at how do we, look at and developing the new markets. So we need to reduce our dependence on the largest market, and we have to create more markets because the technology adoption is not going to be concentrated only in one part of the world. It is going to grow in the others also. There is still some time for us to catch up, at the same time for those markets to catch up. So that brings up the opportunity that it is not a short-lived dream. It is going to be at least next one decade when the adoption of technology will be significant, and we need to be prepared for that if we have to become $500 billion or $1 trillion.
Thank you, Dharmender. Very focused on the IT industry, obviously, and you have given a framework for us to think about the various actors, the regulators, the government, the industry itself, and the user community, which includes other industries. And I'll come back to you, with specific questions on each one of those things. And we now come to Vinod Sood, Managing Director, Hughes Cystic Limited. Vinod.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, and thank you, CII, for having me on this panel. And actually taking off from what Chris, Dilip, and Dharmender you said, as we are seeing, technologies are seeping into every aspect of our lives. Technology is becoming all pervasive and is getting integrated in all aspects of the business, right from enhancing the customer experience, redesigning and reconfiguring business processes and operations to make them more optimal, efficient, and friction-free. If you see, new age technologies are becoming mainstream and becoming part of our lives. Words like blockchain, NFT, AI, ML, quantum computing, they're actually becoming part of the everyday lingua, and technology is becoming social. And I think over a period of time, this will become the norm and the way we do business. And this is the reason why many believe that the coming decade, or the decade in which we are, will be a decade, one where technology is central to life and business. The entire world actually is looking at technology to solve, in fact, all kinds of problems. And Chris, you alluded to that, not just business problems, but also issues related to environment, sustainability, workforce diversity, and other societal issues. Now, coming to India, India's strength in technology and the large tech talent pool we have, I think will enable us to shape the decade and be at the forefront to take part in the growth opportunities which this offers to the Indian companies. As we all know, we already have made a mark in IT services, and Dharmender talked about it. But we also now are increasingly becoming a force on the software side. According to the McKinsey and NASSCOM report, which was just released a couple of months back, SaaS from India will reach $1 trillion in market cap in the next 10 years. What it took the entire IT industry more than 30 years. On the IT-enabled services, the business has been growing rapidly. And as we all know, enterprises and industries across the world realized the importance of technology and digitalization during the pandemic to provide resilience, to maintain continuity of supply chains, for connecting consumers, employees, and vendors. And Dilip talked about this. Technology, in fact, also is disrupting business models. In fact, as we have seen, creating altogether new businesses where tech is at the center of the business and not at the periphery. And all this is leading to huge demand, which presents huge opportunities to the Indian tech sector. And again, I don't remember the source, but one report, a very recent report again, talked about that cloud enablement and migration, AI and big data, cybersecurity, and machine-to-machine communication, IoT, Industry 4.0, whatever you call it, all put together can be easily in itself a $1 trillion opportunity for the Indian industry in this decade. Now, to sum up, in the long run, digitalization has far-reaching impact to change the overall working of the society by actually bringing in transparency and efficiency. And as we all know, and I think we all will agree, the future will be driven by a digital ecosystem of companies. Tech adoption, there is no doubt about this, that this is the way ahead, and it throws a lot of opportunities for service providers, okay, who understand the power of software to help businesses to become digital first. And Indian tech industry, I think, is in a very unique position to leverage its deep-rooted expertise. And also, in the last 30 years, Indian IT services companies working with the Fortune 500 companies across the world understand. So it's not that they are just doing the software, but to do that software, they understand the businesses, they understand the business processes. So I think we are in a very, very good position to help industries worldwide through our world-class talent, processes, technology leadership, and our understanding of this space very well. So I will stop there. I thought let me just pretty much provide some kind of a context how this decade is a big opportunity and how we are very well placed to in fact take on that opportunity.
Thank you, Vinod. You've added on to the points Dharmendra made about the IT industry in India and how it needs to enter new solutions or new products like cloud enablement, AI, ML, data, IoT, etc. And I'll come back to you and talk about some of the opportunities and challenges. So let me now start with questions, and if you can be very brief in responding, then we can actually probably go around with multiple questions. So Dilip, to you, you talked about the manufacturing consisting of MSMEs in bulk. Again, in a majority of the companies are MSMEs. MSMEs have multiple challenges when it comes to technology adoption. They do not have enough capital to employ. They don't have talent for adoption of newer technologies. They don't have the size and scale to compete with larger players. And in today's world, you talked about supply chain issues and obsolescence rates and things like that. So you also chair the CII's Smart Manufacturing Council. Now, how can we, as CII, how do we as CII look at supporting the MSME community? Maybe one or two things you can take. I put out multiple of these challenges, but what are one or two things that as CII we can help, especially when it comes to digital technologies in helping the MSME sector?
Thanks, Chris. I think it's a very important and a core question that at the Smart Manufacturing Council, with multiple stakeholders, we very closely, are, the last handful of years evaluating. I want to just first of all underscore, a key difference between the state of manufacturing versus the state of the rest of the IT industry. Although there's a lot of operational technologies in manufacturing, but the close end-to-end connectedness that you find in the rest of the enterprise does not exist currently in manufacturing. So that's one thing to be taken cognizance of. It's very important for us to recognize that in order to gain that competitive edge, in order to be able to overcome the complexity that I was previously alluding to, you need to have that that data infrastructure and the ability to take those real-time, insights-driven decisions at every level of the organization. It's just not possible without doing that, right? So to get to that stage, it is very important. But the state of the current manufacturing within MSME is that we often say that it's not a question of Industry 4.0. We're currently stuck at a level before that, the Industry 3.0, which is connectedness and that infrastructure. It's not there where it needs to be at. That's one part, and the other thing is also the culture around taking facts-based, insights-supported decisions, is also not there, just because in smaller organizations, decision-making tend to be highly concentrated with a few decision makers. So that's the current state of the state. But the opportunity is to transition to a whole new state, whether you look at it being driven by the threats and the current vectors, or if you're driven by the opportunity that you see. As the CII Smart Manufacturing Council, what we are doing, Chris, is really a couple of things. We've assembled a lot of stakeholders, technology companies, end user companies now, right? And also service providers, right? The idea is to basically, have a holistic approach to create a framework by which the industry can begin to come up the learning curve. So we're creating possibilities by which you can handhold organizations by helping them assess where do they stand, in terms of their readiness to adopt these technologies. And you can begin to walk from wherever you are. So we are creating capabilities for meeting people where they are, and then handholding them through this journey, right? Giving them a phased approach towards adoption of technology. So we are assembling all the best practices that are out there, global, but more importantly, Indian success stories, variety of use cases that are out there which are relevant to the specific industries, where the users are coming from, right? And also making sure that, where do I go? Who can I rely on when I walk down this path of digital transformation? So we are onboarding service providers and really creating, a dynamic directory of sorts, right? Also, we are creating possibilities around people being able to come visit, existing centers, experience zones, et cetera, et cetera. We're trying to create a string of pearls across the country by onboarding people who have these assets, and so that users can come in and interact with people and see for themselves how technology is really making that impact. So there's a whole lot of that approach that is going on. We're taking a 360 degree approach, working on the on identifying the technologies, assembling all the use cases, bringing all the key stakeholders on one common platform, and then creating engagement possibilities with the industry, right? So that it becomes possible for people to connect and see what has been the experience of others like them, and thus their fear of adopting new technology begins to come down, and they have some pathway to get started. So I'll just pause over there, but hopefully
Yeah.
I gave you, yeah.
No, it's a um, wonderful answer. In fact, you've answered one of the questions which have come from the participant. Where do I start? I think where you start is actually connect with the Smart Manufacturing Council, and Dilip talked about case studies, examples, factory visits. They have so many experts, so many solutions that are available for a small enterprise to figure out where do they start. So let me now come to Dharmender. Dharmender, you are very, specific about, the challenges in the IT services industry. Clearly, how do we go from $200 billion to $500 billion? One of the biggest challenges, see, right now, the industry employs 5 million people, right? As you rightly said. Now, to go to 500 billion, it will have to go from whatever the number, 5 million to 10 million to maybe 12, 13 million. That's a large number, and the industry also is finding it difficult to get enough talent from the academic institutes. Parallelly, they will also have to figure out how to retrain, because many of the people who are already in the system have skills in older technologies. Now they need to move to things like I think Vinod talked about AI, ML, IoT, cloud adoption. So they'll have to be reskilled also. So one side you have, how do we get enough number of people? On the other side, how do we reskill the people that are already employed? And what you think should the industry be doing? How can CII help in this regard? So if you can take that question there, Manthan.
Thank you, Chris. I think this is one of the most significant issue that every single company is facing. In fact, there is one question that is also there on the chat window. Okay, how do I really find the right people and where do I begin? So this is absolutely very pertinent point that we need to solve. Yes, we have 5 million employees today in the IT. And when we want to be 2.5 times of where we are with respect to the dollar numbers, I don't think that we need to be 2.5 times of the employees by that time. That's the reason I did talk about that the automation would be very key and the productivity will be very key. Probably we may move from 5 million to 7 million, but we increase the size of the industry by 2.5 times. I think that's something that we will have to figure out, because automation and productivity improvement would be very key, because we cannot produce as many people as are required. Okay, there will always be a limitation on the people side, and we'll have to only make them more productive. We'll have to bring in more and more automation into the job that we do today as part of the technology industry. So I think that is one thing that we'll have to look at. The second part which the companies will have to do is that they will have to change the model in which they bring the workforce into the mainstream, bring the students into the mainstream. For a long time, we have been, hiring the people and then training them. But we need to flip that model where how do we train the people and then hire them? So that would mean that there will be a larger association that will be required between the industry and the educational institute. It cannot be that we just produce the people from the colleges, they get the degree, and then we try to make them employable after they join the company. We have to make them employable much before they join the company. And that would mean that the industry will have to go where the talent is. And will have to ensure that in their third year of the engineering study or the fourth year of engineering study, we start teaching them what is required when they get employed. So when they come into the organization, they are already productive rather than waiting for 6 months to get productive and picking up the speed as they go along. So I think that is one time to become more productive has to be reduced significantly. At the same time, we will have to look at which is that how do we enable people to reskill themselves, because technology changes very, very fast. By the time we learn one technology, there is another one staring at us, and the demand continues to increase, and one has to continue to train himself or herself onto the newer set of the technologies. The good part is that now we have the online methods through which the people can be reskilled, can be upskilled. I think we need to adopt those methods of reskilling people. And it cannot be just that we just leave it on the online channel. We will have to marry the online channels with the offline channels that are there. And in order to really look at how effectively it can be deployed, because if we just think that people are going to train themselves directionlessly, then it will be a problem because we'll be spending the money but not getting the advantage. At the same time, not getting the skills that we need. So we will have to look at how do we bring that together. The work from home has given both the opportunities and the challenges. The opportunity is very clearly that now people can have the flexibility and people can get trained wherever they are, and they are available round the clock. So I think that is the opportunity that is there. But there is a disadvantage that if everybody continues to work from home, then we need to very clearly look at who are the people who are okay to get into the managerial positions, who are the people who would want to continue to focus just on the technology, and they can continue to work on the individual roles. So the organizations will have to change their policies in order to suit the newer hybrid model. Rather than thinking that everybody is going to come to office, that is not going to happen. At the same time, not everybody is comfortable working from home also. So there is going to be a hybrid model. It is irreversible, and that is going to stay. One can argue about the percentage, how much it will be at office and how much it will be at home. I think the time will tell. But it is true that many of the people would like to continue to work as individual performers working from the home. But others who want to grow, they will have to come back to office and connect with the people, because that's the only way you can grow. So how do we have more clearer definition of the roles? How do we align the policies to that? And how do we really go and take it back to the colleges? All that has to come together in order to really decipher the newer model that we want to adopt. And I think that is what will be an answer, hopefully, very soon, that every company is working on. And I'm sure that, it is not the first time that we have received this kind of challenge. We have been able to overcome many of the challenges before, and this one also will be behind us very soon.
Yeah, in the IT industry has definitely um, worked on the talent pipeline, enabling the talent for the last 30 years, and will continue to, as it is more complex, but will continue to figure out. So Vinod, you talked about the transition to products, transition to SaaS. We have examples of Soho, Freshdesk.
Yes.
We have examples of ERP for the banking industry, like from TCS, Infosys, etc.
Right.
We have examples of product companies which run the baggage handling or air handling software for major airlines in the world, etc., coming from India. But till now, this has been a very small part. I think the estimate, I think NASSCOM came out with was about 10 billion or something like that.
Right.
In revenue, but to go to a significant part of the overall 1 trillion, this has to scale up dramatically.
Right.
How do you see this happening? What are some of the things you feel we should be doing if you want to transition to a product based technology industry or a SaaS based technology industry?
Absolutely. I think, Chris, what you said is very relevant, and Dharmender also alluded to that. I think instead of a linear model where we are looking at from 200 billion to 500 billion means 2.5 times more manpower. Instead of that, now what we have to start looking at is how do we add more value? Okay, in terms of revenue per employee, how does that go up significantly? For the Indian IT industry, as we all know, revenue per employee is of the order of $40,000 to $50,000. How can we take it to $100,000 and more? And I think some of the things which need to be done are, as you said, we need to start looking at solutions. Okay, how do we engage with customers, and instead of working or providing to their requirements, have a consultative kind of approach where we work with them in terms of providing end-to-end solutions. And to provide end-to-end solutions, it is going to be a mix of services where we have a lot of capabilities, we have experience, but then solution also will entail that we bring in components, we bring in IPs, and eventually we bring in shrink wrap products or SaaS products. Okay. And I think in the last 1 decade, a good beginning has been made, and a lot of that foundation, as you mentioned, was laid by, for example, Infosys and TCS as far as the banking platform is concerned, right? Some of the other companies, for example, my earlier company, Hughes Software Systems. Okay, we started on the product initiative where we started building protocol stacks. Okay, and some of the world's largest telecom networks are now being run on some of those protocol stacks. So I think the beginning has been made. Okay, the entire ecosystem which enables product mindset, which enables companies to invest in R&D because product development is a long lead item. I think those pillars of the ecosystems have been put in place. Another very positive thing which is happening is that in the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of product deep tech startups have started emerging from the ecosystem. Okay, and in terms of funding these startups, we also are seeing that there is a great interest as far as the VCs are concerned in terms of funding these startups out of India. And there have been some success stories as we have seen. Okay, Freshworks did a very successful IPO. And all that, I think, is building the confidence within the entire ecosystem that now we have the ability to build IP, we have the ability to build products, okay, and that is the way we need to go in the coming decade, and that is how I think we can add value. And instead of a linear model where we are looking at doubling or tripling the tech manpower to get to a $500 billion kind of a number, through products and end-to-end solutions, we should be able to do that much faster. And I think a lot of those ingredients which are required to do that are now coming in place.
Thank you, Vinod. Especially, talking about the venture community's role in enabling this, and that's a change that has happened in the last 10 years. We have, large number of venture capital firms, funds up, and funding is now available. In the last round of questions, I'm going to ask something personal to each one of you and very brief answers. So, the topic was, opportunities for Indian enterprises in the new world order. So, in this round, I'm going to ask, how are you planning to transform yourself? Now, I'm talking about you as a person to take advantage of the new world order. Where do you see in yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? So let me start with Vinod. So we'll go in the reverse order now. So Vinod, you have to think about if you can say.
In fact, yeah, I think we are very lucky. One, we are part of the tech industry, and as I said, this decade is going to be a tech decade. So in terms of personal satisfaction, being a technology professional in a very vantage position to drive that opportunity is satisfying. And what personally I am enjoying is working with a lot of deep tech startups. And within NASSCOM, we have created what we call as the Deep Tech Club, which is an ecosystem of senior executives, technology professionals, VCs, mentors who are mentoring and helping deep tech startups to build products out of the country. So that is what my personal ambition and goal is, that we should be known as a deep tech product country.
So that's what you will
in the coming decade.
That's what you will try. So Dharmender, same question to you. What do you see as your contribution, your role in the new world order?
Yeah, thank you, Chris, for putting me on the spot. It is always a difficult thing to look within what you want others to follow. But I think it is absolutely a very apt question for each one of us. And I will briefly say that I think it is a time again that we had to reimagine and reinvent ourselves. So I will have to continue to really look at that. And I have always believed in two statements, which is one, that in technology industry, the only thing that we can imagine what we want to be 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the line is just to say that I want to remain relevant, because it changes so fast. You cannot just say that this is what I want to become. But if you remain relevant, you can become much more than what you can imagine today. Okay, so I think that is one thing that I always say. And second, I always say that doesn't matter what kind of situation it is, there is always a way. And I think that I continue to remind myself that there is always a way. It is only that we require courage to go and find one. And I think this is the time again where there is a very good demand on one side, but there are constraints on the other side. We have to have the courage to find a way for ourselves. And I think that is what I will look for.
So you will find a way to stay relevant.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Dilip, again, same question to you. How do you see your contribution, your role in the new world order, especially in the smart manufacturing area?
So thanks, Chris. There are several thoughts going through my mind, but I'm just going to put focus on two aspects. One thing is, if we as an industry, and in my capacity, as the business leader for Rockwell Automation, I mean, if we are to be the trusted advisors for the industry to transform itself, then we got to first of all be transforming ourselves at a pace which is much greater, right? So we have to constantly be looking at opportunities to transform ourselves. Otherwise, we'll be rendered irrelevant, as was the comment which was previously made. And one thing which we are trying to do very consciously within the organization is bringing about a culture of reverse mentoring, because there's so many fresh ideas that are coming in through younger workforce that's coming in, bustling with ideas. And how can we get into, it brings the whole idea of being open to learning and staying humble at the same time. It just brings it to bear instantly if you're open to reverse mentoring. So, as an organization, we are trying to embrace that. Two thoughts from my side.
Thank you very much. I will not try to summarize all the thoughts, but we have had a very broad discussion, both from the digital technology perspective, manufacturing, issues related to manufacturing, and of course, the IT industry. You also heard personal um, perspectives about what individually we can do as leaders. And I want to thank all the panelists, wonderful discussion. And I want to thank CII for giving us this opportunity to share our thoughts on the opportunities for Indian enterprises in the new world order. Very optimistic. We believe that we will be a $5 trillion economy and primarily driven through digital technologies. Over to you, Ankur.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gopalakrishnan, and thank you, Dilip, Vinod, and Dharmender for this lovely interaction. With this, we come to the end for this session, and I hand over the platform to Kavita, my colleague, to take forward the next session, please. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah,